right, hello, welcome to the Inside the Birds NFL Week 4 preview. I'm Geoff Mosher, and after this week, we will be 4 games into the NFL season. A while back, when it was a 16-game season, that would be exactly the first quarter mark for the year. Now it's 17 games, so you're about a quarter of the way through the year. If there's one thing so far that has really stood out about the NFL year, this might be the best start for a rookie class that I've ever seen. It's certainly the best start for a rookie class in quite some time. You've got Jaden Daniels with his heroics against the Bengals. He looks like a fantastic young quarterback who is getting better every week. Your wide receivers, you've seen now Marvin Harrison have 2 really big weeks in a row. Malik Neighbors looks like he's on his way to becoming what he's supposed to be, a star in this league. You got the rookie defensive ends for the Rams who are playing well. The offensive tackles, Joe Alt, J.C. Latham playing well. Talisi Fuaga for the Saints. Fatanu for the Steelers was playing well before he got hurt, but their center, Zach Frazier, playing very well and starting for a Steelers offensive line that has been getting the job done. You saw Roma Dunze had a big game for the Bears last week. This has been a good rookie class. Keon Coleman had a touchdown last week. Lad McConkey, I believe, is the second leading receiver for the Chargers. Quinyon Mitchell for the Eagles is starting and playing well. This is a good start for this rookie class all around. And you don't see this many rookies usually making that kind of an impact. Yeah, sure, 5, 6, 7 rookies will catch you, but right now, rookie of the year, it always goes to quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels clearly in the lead, but how can you look at what Malik Neighbors has done and Marvin Harrison playing well, and the Chargers off to a 2-1 start with Joe Alt on their line. And Caleb Williams will get better. He's off to a tough start, but he'll get better. But certainly a nice surprise from what you've seen. Oh, Brock Bowers, I didn't mention him. He's caught a lot of balls for the Raiders. This has been a nice surprise. Good rookie class has stood out, and probably will only get better as the year goes on. You got a couple of 3-0 teams, 5 teams that are 3-0. Quietly, the Buffalo Bills look very impressive. Quietly, the Buffalo Bills, who lost a lot on offense, we'll talk about them in their matchup this week, look very good. The other 3-0 teams, yeah, sure. They got the Chiefs are 3-0. You've got the Vikings, who have surprised everybody by being 3-0. But I don't think we're talking about the Bills a whole lot. And they're an impressive team. The Steelers 3-0. I don't know how many people saw that. But and same thing with the Seahawks. The Bills quietly 3-0 and pretty much dominating as they did against the Jacksonville Jags. Now, on the flip side, Jags, Bengals, and Titans all go into this week 0-3. This is now desperation week for all those teams. The Bengals always start slow, but you start to get to 0-4 and you get really worried. The Jags look like a mess right now. And the Titans have a bye week after this week. So if they don't win, you never want to lose going to the bye week anyway. You don't want to be 0-4 going into the bye week. There are all sorts of question marks will happen about your personnel. Now, the coach, Brian Callen, it's his first year, so he won't be on the hot seat. But clearly, you go into the bye week 0-4. You're thinking about everything that's wrong and how you're going to correct it, and your quarterback will come under the microscope, and everything else with the organization will come under the microscope. So the Titans really need to get a win in the worst way, and they play the Dolphins, who are all sorts of beat up. If they can't win that game, we'll talk about that. But 0-4, losing to the Titans going into the bye week is not going to be good for the Tennessee Titans. One team that was not looking good was the Cowboys, coming off 2 really bad losses, getting blown out at home by the Saints and then losing, falling down big to the Ravens, trying to make a comeback and losing and being 1-2. They could not fall to 1-3. It should have been a get right game for them Thursday night against the Giants. They won. Yes. Did the Giants ever look like they were going to win that game? No, but you would have liked to seen the Cowboys win that game more convincingly. I get it. You're just trying to snap an 0-2 streak. But the Giants are a team that for the last few years, they've been really beating up on. And even though the Giants are better, the Cowboys I think that they would have felt better about themselves as they have come out of there with a 13 to 15 point win. They did get better on defense as far as stopping the run, but you're talking about a Giants team that's not very good. Brian Dable coached conservatively. Surprised me. 2 years ago, the Giants made the playoffs. It seems like every button that Dable pushed 2 years ago was the right button. Ever since, not so much. I mean, he kicks a field goal in the third quarter when they're inside the 10. I mean, you're playing the Cowboys. You haven't beat them in forever. You're home. You got neighbors catching everything. I just think Brian Dable has gotten conservative with this team, and I'm not sure that that's going to unlock the Giants if you're going to coach this team conservatively. It seemed like he was happy to be in the game against the Cowboys and was just hoping that they could make a mistake. They could get the Cowboys to make a mistake and try to win that game, but the Giants were just not good enough on third or fourth down in that game, had to settle for too many field goals, and Dallas comes out of there with a much needed win. Meanwhile, Giants 1-3. Getting great play out of Neighbors, getting better play out of Daniel Jones. Jones had what, 3 touchdowns against Washington. They happened to lose that game because they gave up 7 field goals, but he had 3 touchdowns against Washington. He came back, did okay against the Cowboys. He's not everybody was worried about him in the preseason. He's going to be a turnover magnet. He's terrible. He's not their biggest problem. It's not their biggest problem. They just haven't executed well enough as a team. They don't have a running game. And when you're playing like a team against when you're playing the Cowboys, you got to be able to score more points. And that's why I think Dable should have opened it up a little bit more. Nevertheless, the Giants lose, and they're in trouble. If they keep losing, the Giants do, as they fell to 1-3. The Quinn Ewers sweepstakes that we keep talking about will be alive and well. So they're going to have to figure out a way to get off the schneid here and get another win soon. And it's going to be tough because even though they get the mini bye, they get Seattle coming up in their next game. Seattle's already off to a 3-0 start. So 1-4 with the Bengals and the Eagles and the Steelers out of their 3. That's tough. Going to be tough for the Giants. They got to get things together. All right, we'll start with the 1:00 games. Saints at Falcons. Interesting game. Good NFC South game. Falcons come home after giving a really good effort there against the Chiefs. Obviously they didn't get the call they wanted in the end zone at the end of the game. They lost. These are two similar offenses, Shanahan style offenses. I don't think Kirk Cousins has played his best football yet. I think he's been getting better within that new offense each week. I still think they need somebody to step up and be that number 2 receiver or pass catcher next to Drake London. I said last week, I thought Kyle Pitts needed to be that guy, especially if they wanted to beat the Chiefs. He had one big play. He had the 50-yard catch, but really nothing else. You can't have Mooney. You can't have Ray McLeod being your number 2 guy. I mean, those guys are good number 3 guys. So it's either going to be Pitts or something else. But right now, their offense is not yet clicking the way it could. And I think Kirk Cousins still just isn't 100% comfortable yet in that offense. And they need this win. The Saints came back to earth. You saw that against the Eagles. You see how Derek Carr can go back from being a guy who looks like he's reborn into an amazing quarterback into an average one if you can stop the Saints run game and get some pressure on him. The Eagles were able to do that. They got pressure on him, and he went back to being scattershot. I think the Falcons can do that. They have a good defensive front. They have a good secondary. They can, at home, force the Saints to be behind the sticks a little bit. They can tackle. So I would expect that the Saints will try to get Kamara going again. And if they don't, they will have to pass a little bit more. And that will be difficult for them. I wouldn't be shocked if this is a lower scoring game. And clearly it's a bigger game for the Falcons, who would be 1-3 if they lose. And that would put them behind the Bucs and behind the Saints. So this is an important game for the Falcons. They're 1.5-point favorites. And this is the game they got to have. Rams at Bears. Now, I said last week I wasn't worried about Caleb Williams, even after the Bears started 0-2. And I'm still not. I know he's had some turnover issues. I'm more worried about this Bears offensive line. It is killing him right now. I know Caleb Williams made a lot of good throws in college because of a bad offensive line, but this is the NFL. And if you're on the run and you're getting hit, it's going to take a toll on you, especially as a rookie. He had his first 300-yard game last week against the Colts, but he was sacked 5 times. I mean, there were some plays where the Colts were just on him less than 2 seconds after the snap. He had to throw the ball 52 times in that game. That's not who the Bears need to be. They have to get their offensive line right. They have to be able to run the ball. They have to let their defense do the heavy lifting. They cannot have Caleb Williams at this point throwing 52 times in a game. He had 2 turnovers, an interception. He had a fumble. One of them turned into a Colts touchdown, or else maybe the Bears win that game. But I worry whenever I see a young quarterback getting hit that much, as he's gotten hit so far, Caleb Williams, about the mechanics, about the fundamentals, their ability to stay in a protected pocket when it is good, about protecting the ball. So the Bears have to get right up front. Shane Waldron got to do a better job figuring out ways. If it's max protecting, if it's more play action, more under center, you have to protect Caleb Williams and limit the times he's getting hit, rely on your defense, play conservatively if you need to, run the ball better, figure it out. But you can't have Caleb Williams throwing 52 times. On the flip side, you got to give the Rams a lot of credit. I mean, they have nobody in their passing game. There's no Nakua and there's no Cup, and it's going to be like that until both guys come back. But you see how good McVay is and how good Stafford is. They were down 21-7 in the third quarter against the Niners. And they didn't have an answer for Juwan Jennings, who had 3 touchdowns in that game, but they figured out how to move the ball and how to put points on the board, even though they were outgained by almost 150 yards. All right. So it's going to be that way each week for the Rams until Nakua and Cup get back. Now they've got to go do it in Chicago. I think that's not an easy task. I know that it's just tough to do this week after week when you don't have your best players. It's tough. It's a tough ask. I don't know. I know McVay's a great coach. I know that the Bears are struggling, but I don't think this is going to be the easiest game in the world for the Rams. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears figured out a way to get a win here, because you're just not week in and week out. It's really tough when you don't have your best playmakers. You can figure it out 1 or 2 weeks, but week in, week out, that becomes very difficult. Vikings at Packers. Now, this might be an early look at the NFC Championship game. Yes, I know I'm overreacting after 4 weeks, but hey, look, the Vikings have been great. They are getting fantastic ball out of Sam Darnold. And I told you last week, 2 elite play callers in this league are Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings head coach, and the Packers head coach, Matt LaFleur. And now they get to face each other. So this should be a nice little cat and mouse game. But the Vikings have been able to score a whole lot of points even without Jordan Addison. All right. So that just shows you how good Sam Darnold has been. Nobody thought that they were going to be undefeated after 3 weeks. Nobody thought they'd be playing as well. I mean, they stomped on the Texans. The Texans are a little beat up, but they stomped on the Texans last week, 34-7. Now they have to go to Green Bay. Green Bay, ever since losing to the Eagles, has looked phenomenal. I told you last week, it doesn't matter that they're going into Tennessee with Willis as their quarterback. I told you, I thought LaFleur was good enough to win that game, or at least cover, and they won outright, and they won convincingly. All right, so now they get a chance to maybe get Jordan Love back. He was a little jittery in the opener against the Eagles. Everybody was falling over to the place. If he can just run the offense, make the plays he's supposed to make, I like the Packers in this game. It won't be easy, but it should be a very good game, and I think the Packers have the ability to slow down the Vikings. Brian Flores has done an unbelievable job with that Vikings defense. He has figured out a way, even with a couple of 30-somethings in his backfield and Harrison Smith and Steph Gilmore, to get his blitz system going, to shake up quarterbacks. I mean, he made his defense made CJ Stroud look ordinary, not ordinary, but mortal for once, which is very tough to do. This is a very tough defense that the Vikings have. Looks like their left tackle's hurt, Darisaw. So we'll see if he's able to play. If not, that gives the Packers even more advantage. Like the Packers in this game, should be a close game. If you love, elite play callers, if you like good offensive play, you like good defense, well-rounded games that are probably going to be somewhere in the 20s and 30s, this is the game to watch. On the opposite end, also in the 1 o'clock game, you have the 3-0 Steelers who are now playing the Colts. The Steelers are 3-0. No one thought that they would be 3-0 going into the year. They have one of the worst offenses in the league by most advanced metrics, but they're 3-0 because they also have one of the best defenses in the league by any metric. All right. They've allowed 7 third down conversions through 3 weeks. Think about that. The Steelers have given up 7 third downs in 3 weeks. They just humbled the Chargers 20-10. They're getting Justin Fields to play more efficiently. He's limiting his turnovers. He's starting to operate the offense the way they want to do. Now, it's still an offense that's predicated on running the ball and getting Fields outside the pocket, but he's making better throws. If you remember week 1, and of course, it's week 1, but there were a couple of screens, a couple of short passes that he sailed or underthrew. He just didn't look comfortable. He's starting to look comfortable now. Now, the issue with the Steelers is they have some injuries on the offensive line. Fatanu's hurt. Samalo's still out. That's not good. Najee Harris was in a sling after the game. It looks like he's going to play. They did not run the ball well against the Chargers. I think it was under 4 yards per carry, 3.7 per carry. So that's a little bit of an alarm as they go and face the Colts at Lucas Oil Stadium. Colts have figured out ways to sometimes, just make enough plays to win games. They're a very strange team. They did beat the Bears 21-16. That was their win. So they got off the schneid after an 0-2 start. Can they beat the Steelers? It's going to take more from Shane Steichen, honestly, the head coach and the play caller, to figure out a way to get Anthony Richardson to use the middle of the field, to be able to work the offense down the field without just feeding the ball to Anthony Davis and without just throwing deep bombs. They have been a very feast or famine offense, and you can see they're relying even more on Anthony Davis and less on the arm of Anthony Richardson because he just has not been good throughout the first 3 weeks. He's made some shot plays, but otherwise he's been a pretty terrible quarterback through 3 weeks. If you remember when he was with the Eagles, he figured out a way to change the offense around in year 2 with Jalen Hurts. Greg Cosell has talked about this. He after the first few games of 2022, they decided to shelve a few things offensively, rely heavier on some other things offensively, and they got Jalen Hurts to play some fantastic football. He's got to go back to the drawing board with Anthony Richardson. Now, in fairness, they faced Houston, very good defense in week 1. They faced Green Bay week 2, another good defense, and then Chicago has a good defense. But you know what? It's not getting easier for them because now they have to welcome the Steelers, who have the best defense out of all 4 of those teams. Probably going to be a low-scoring game. I think we could all safely assume that. Can the Colts win? Yes. Do they need amazing offense? No, but they need to be better offensively. If the Steelers win and go to 4-0, it'll just be a masterful job, as usual, by Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith. All right, the Broncos are at the Jets. The Jets are 7.5-point favorites, coming off that Thursday night win, so they get the mini bye from beating the Patriots. What I liked about that game was Aaron Rodgers started to look more comfortable in the offense. He's not back to his form from 5 or 6 years ago, but he did get the tight end involved. Jets are doing a nice job getting both of their running backs involved, Breece Hall and the rookie Braylon Allen from Wisconsin. He's a young kid, but he's shifty. He can catch the ball. And now you're seeing the Jets use both running backs, not only in the run game, but in the pass game. And if they can just get a little bit more going with Rodgers to Garrett Wilson and Rodgers to Mike Williams, they're going to be pretty tough to beat because they're starting to look smoother offensively. The Patriots hadn't looked terrible in their first 2 weeks, but they were just no match for the Jets, and the Jets were able to move the ball, and the Jets have a very good defense. They won their week 3 negotiation against Hassan Reddick by beating up on the Patriots and sacking Jacoby Brissett. Will McDonald off to a very good start, already has 5 sacks. So now they get the Broncos, another offensively defunct team. I know the Broncos had a pretty good offensive day against the Buccaneers in Tampa last week, but this Jets defense should be able to solve Bo Nix. It should be able to get on top of them and make some plays. And if they can Jets keep winning without having to and get good defense like they did against the Patriots, if the Jets can go to 3-1 here and beat the Broncos, feather in the cap for them as they continue to play this cat and mouse game with Hassan Reddick. The Broncos, I mentioned, were able to get a lot of pressure on Baker Mayfield. On 45% of Mayfield's drops, the Broncos got pressure. Broncos have some sneaky good pass rushers. They don't have one guy who sticks out like a Micah Parsons, but at the end of last year, they were doing a good job of getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So they're more of a sum of the parts type team than an individual. Obviously, their defensive coordinator Vance Joseph, he loves to blitz. He's kind of like Todd Bowles. He wakes up and rolls out of bed and calls a blitz. So you're going to have to be, if you're Aaron Rodgers, you got to be ready for that. I don't know if the Broncos can go on the road 2 straight weeks and pull off upsets, especially against a team as balanced as the Jets are. You go from having to face and having to confuse a guy like Baker Mayfield trying to do that to Aaron Rodgers. It's not going to be easy, but I did say last week I thought Bo Nix would be, don't freak out at Broncos being 0-2 and having no offense. It's going to be a work in progress. Nix will get better. He did get better. Had a nice back shoulder throw to Sutton early in the game. Had some pretty good rushes himself. He's a better athlete than he's given credit for, and give him and Sean Payton some credit. They'll continue to improve, but two straight road games against two pretty tough defenses is a tough ask. They were able to get to Bowles' defense. We'll see what they can do against Robert Saleh. Bengals at Panthers. Panthers come home, and they are 4.5-point underdogs at home to the Bengals. Now, Dave Canales put his neck on the line last week. Panthers head coach, first-year head coach, brought in to be the quarterback whisperer for Bryce Young. And after 2 weeks, he pulls the plug on Bryce Young. But you know what? That game showed. The game showed as they went into Las Vegas and kicked the crap out of the Raiders. Let's be real. They beat up the Raiders. They were up big. They won by 14. They were up by even more in that game. All right. But that game showed you that Canales was right, and he must have seen it in training camp, in the preseason. To pull the plug on Bryce Young after 2 weeks, he must have absolutely known that there was no way his offense could be functional with Bryce Young. And you make a change like that, you get a veteran like Dalton in, who's a competent quarterback. He knows what he wants to do with the ball. He's not great, but he's good enough. You make a change like that to someone who can lead an offense, suddenly the offensive line looks a little better. Suddenly the wide receivers look better. The run game looks a little bit better, right? You saw Chuba Hubbard have a nice game. Chuba Hubbard. You saw Deontay Johnson get unlocked. The offensive line, which took a lot of grief after the 0-2 start, all of a sudden, they're looking a little bit better. Good on Canales to see that. Hopefully, Bryce Young is getting an education while he watches and sees what goes on. Now, can they beat the Bengals? They went out and shell-shocked the Raiders after the Raiders were coming off this big win against the Ravens. Can they do that against a Bengals team that is starving right now for a win? The Bengals always start off slow, but this team has problems, especially on defense. They can't stop anybody. I mean, they just let a rookie quarterback, and I know Jaden Daniels has been good. He embarrassed them. 91% completion percent. 91% is embarrassing in this league when you have as many veterans on defense as the Bengals had. They can't rush the passer. They're not making any impact plays on defense. They got some injuries now on the defensive line going into this game. Their hurry rate is one of the worst. If they don't win this game, they're 0-4 with the Ravens on deck. They absolutely must save their season here. And I think everybody knows that. And that's why the Panthers are getting 4.5 points in this game. Burrow's starting to look better. Threw a bunch of touchdowns in that game against Washington, scored a lot of points. Defense has to improve. Lou Anarumo has done a good job up until last year with this Bengals defense. They've been a sieve. It's going back, they've been giving up explosive plays left and right. He's got to figure it out, or else this Bengals team, they're going to be done before it's halfway through the year. And this was a team a lot of people thought, myself included, were what with Burrow back was going to be a very good team, maybe a playoff team, maybe a Super Bowl contender. Not looking like it right now. Jags, the Texans, you got to look for a bounce back here from the Texans after a really bad loss to the Vikings. Now, yeah, they got some injuries. Tank Dell, Joe Mixon, those guys could be out. Nico Collins a little bit banged up. But the Jags have been a disgrace. They are terrible. The offense is putrid. Defense can't stop anyone. They just got humiliated by the Bills, and Trevor Lawrence looks like he's regressing. He looks like a guy in this offense who doesn't know, who's expecting to get hit, doesn't know who his playmakers are, doesn't have any help with the offensive play calling. His offensive line's been bad. The routes look stale. I mean, folks, we saw this with Doug Peterson in the Eagles. You have success early, and then teams catch up to what you do, and you don't adjust. And you got Doug Peterson there, and you got the offensive play caller, Press Taylor, and Doug fell on a sword for Press Taylor for the Eagles. And is he going to do it again in Jacksonville? Because that offense is horrific. The Jags have scored 40 points in 3 games. You know what? New Orleans had that in the opener. Yes, they're without Evan Ingram. Yes, the linebackers are hurt. Every team's got injuries. There's no excuse for how bad the Jaguars have been. They've lost 4 in a row and 8 of 9 going back to last year. They were 8-3 last year. Everything looked good. Then they collapsed. And the collapse has continued. They haven't even looked decent in a single game. They need this game more than ever. I don't think they're going to get it. Unfortunately for them, Texas is coming off a really embarrassing loss, and C.J. Stroud looked like a mortal. He's going to come back at home fired up. Bad spot for Doug Peterson here. 4:00 games. You got the Washington Commanders at the Cardinals. Now, this is a tough spot. Everybody's in love with Washington and Jaden Daniels right now. They go on the road. They pull off this win against the Bengals, and everybody is excited. It's tough to win in this league. It's tough to go on the road twice and win twice when you've got a rookie quarterback. Now, they went out to Washington early. I'm sorry, they went out to Arizona early, which makes a lot of sense. Cardinals are 3.5-point favorites, by the way. They've had heroics now 2 straight weeks, the Commanders. They had 7 field goals against the Giants to win that game. Then obviously they get the big game with McLaurin and Daniels to beat the Bengals. And now you're on the road to face a Cardinals team that isn't bad. All right. And they won't have Austin Eckler. He didn't even travel with the team because of a concussion. I think you do see the fact that the Commanders were smart with their offseason. They brought in a lot of veterans. They didn't spend a ton of money, right? But they brought in a lot of like mid-level veterans to kind of help the young quarterback along and to help this team kind of get rewrited after years of not being very good. And with Dan Quinn at the helm now, you saw Zach Ertz had some big catches there against the Bengals. Their center, Tyler Biadasz, who they signed from the Cowboys, has done a nice job. McLaurin steps up. Finally, I said last week, they got to get him the ball. They got him the ball. He had his first big game. Their linebackers are veterans. Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner. Not a great defense, but again, they're giving this team a veteran presence. Noah Brown has stepped in, made some important catches. So you like this Commanders team. They're not making a ton of young mistakes because their quarterback is very mature, and their rookie quarterback has done a job probably even better than anybody thought he could do. But you got to go to Arizona, play your second straight road game. The Cardinals, they rebounded from a tough season opening loss to Buffalo. They're starting to find their identity a little bit. Marvin Harrison has 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. They had a tough loss to the Lions last week, but hey, you know what? They played the Lions tough. 20-16, I think, was the game. They played the Lions tough. So after they played the Bills tough. They were beating the Bills in the opener, but they couldn't finish and they couldn't close. And that's been an issue with this Cardinals team. But I like their chances to come home against this Commanders team, because it's when you got a young quarterback, like, it's tough to really play at an elite level week after week after week. Now, you did see it from CJ Stroud last year as the season went on. Maybe that'll be the case for the Commanders. I expect this to be a good game, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Cardinals won and covered the 3.5. Patriots at Niners. So the Niners are coming off a really bad loss to the Rams. Now, they have a ton of injuries. All right. No Debo last week, no Kittle last week, no CMC last week, and he hasn't been there all year. But you know what? They still got 292 passing yards and 3 touchdowns from Brock Purdy. So memo to the Eagles this week as they play the Buccaneers, and we'll get more into that on the pregame show Sunday morning. Memo to Kellen Moore and memo to Jalen Hurts. You may not have Devontae Smith and you may not have A.J. Brown, but you got Goddard, you got Saquon Barkley, you have an offensive coordinator here, memo to Kellen Moore, who's supposed to be one of the best at what he does. So if the Niners, even in a loss, can score 24 points and get 3 touchdowns from Juwan Jennings, the Eagles should be able to get enough offense against a good Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that is very beat up on defense right now. So back to the Niners. I said in week 1, I was worried about this team. They're not as deep defensively as they've been in the past. Now they've got injuries. Hargrave's been hurt for them. They're not as deep. They're not as good defensively. The Super Bowl hangover has been real for them. They were up 14 points on a Rams team that has almost none of its weapons. You can't let the Rams come back in that game. But they did. But now the Niners come home and they get a Patriots team that, again, the Patriots had a nice start to their season. They had a gutty overtime loss against Seattle in week 2. They surprised everybody with a win against Cincinnati in week 1, but they got their doors blown off by the Jets. And their defense is better than I thought, but their offense stinks on ice. Is it time to go to Drake May? I don't know. Maybe not yet. But Jacoby Brissett has 1 touchdown pass this year. And in 3 games, he has not yet reached 150 passing yards. Now, a lot of that is they don't have playmakers. They have a shaky offensive line. I'm not putting it all on Brissett. This is not a good Patriots offense. They need to run the ball well. They need to rely on Ramondre Stevenson. They need to throw a few passes to Antonio Gibson. They've got to be able to convert on 3rd down and move the chains and stay ahead of the sticks. But they're going to play a San Francisco team that's probably pissed off from losing to the Rams, a San Francisco team that might get Debo back. It's on the road. They have to travel across the country. Niners are 10-point favorites for a reason in this game. And I get it. And I do think that the Niners will figure out a way to win. And it wouldn't surprise me if they cover. Browns at Raiders. You might as well call this game the Disappointment Bowl. Typical Raiders get everybody happy by a win, a big road comeback win against the Baltimore Ravens, get you feeling good about the team. Then they get home and get rocked by the Panthers. I mean, they lose by 14 to the Panthers, who are starting Andy Dalton and just trying to pick up the pieces of their season. At that one point, the game was 33-7. All right, that is a freaking embarrassment. Antonio Pierce saw it. He said his players are making business decisions, and he said it was time for the Raiders coaching staff to make some business decisions of their own. I wonder if one of those decisions will be going to Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. We'll see what happens there. I do expect Las Vegas to look better. They've got injuries, there's no doubt, on defense. They're a little bit beat up, but this is a Browns team that, quite frankly, has been terrible offensively. Deshaun Watson has been terrible offensively. And the one thing you saw from Pierce last year was he was able to get the Raiders to buy into him. And he called them out as he should have. They were terrible. You can't lose to the Panthers at home. You can't be down by 26 points after you go and beat the Ravens on the road. So he called them out, and we'll see how the Raiders respond. I expect them to respond favorably. I expect that they should win this game because the Browns right now also stink on ice. In fact, Kevin Stefanski, Browns head coach, he should send an early Christmas card to Doug Peterson because that's their only win right now. And it's basically because the Jags were worse than the Browns. The Browns have been beat up on the offensive line. It's not their fault, but they're beat up on the offensive line. Myles Garrett's playing hurt. Deshaun Watson has been a disaster. A disaster. I mean, they were down to the Giants 21-7 until they got a fourth quarter touchdown to make that game somewhat respectable. The Giants. They were down 21-7 to the Giants. Watson has a 71.4%, 71.4 passer rating. Still hasn't thrown for 200 yards. Got Jameis Winston just looking over his shoulder. I just wonder how long the Browns can stick with Deshaun Watson. He's been hurt. He's coming off the shoulder surgery. He doesn't look like a good quarterback. He doesn't look like a confident quarterback. And it's been a disaster since they signed him. You have Jameis Winston there. Guy's throwing 50 touchdowns in a season. Look what the Panthers did. Look what the change to Andy Dalton did for the Panthers for 1 week. This Browns, look what happened to the Browns last year when they went to Joe Flacco because Watson got hurt. I'm just telling you, I don't know. I think if the Browns want to save their season, they may have a very quick trigger in this game against the Raiders. If they are down big to the Raiders, you got to think that Kevin Stefanski is going to look over at Jameis Winston and wonder if he can save him. Chiefs and Chargers. The Chiefs are 3-0, but you watch them and their pass offense has just been okay. Travis Kelce has not been involved. Xavier Worthy had a nice week 1, but he's not really getting involved. It's a very Rashee Rice-centric offense right now. I told you they were going to miss Pacheco. I do think they did, even though they beat the Falcons. They just didn't look. They don't look like a Super Bowl team. Now, do you think they'll be there? Sure. I would still, bet on the Kansas City Chiefs to be in the Super Bowl because they just figure it out. But offensively, they just haven't looked. They're not tricking people as much. They're relying on Patrick Mahomes to be great, and he is great, and that's why they're winning games. But you don't see the motion and the misdirection and the end arounds, and you don't see a lot of the wide open guys just catching the ball and running and getting a lot of yards after the catch so far with the Chiefs. But they are 3-0, right? They've played well, beat the Ravens in the opener, beat Atlanta last week. They figure out ways to win games. That's what they do. And now they face a Chargers team that is pretty beat up. Now, both Chargers tackles are hurt. Joe Alt, who's had a nice rookie year, Rashawn Slater, both of those guys are hurt. Derwin James suspended. Bosa is banged up. I mean, these are really important players for the way Jim Harbaugh likes to play ball. He likes to run the ball. We know that. He's been doing a great job of running the ball. J.K. Dobbins has looked fantastic through 3 weeks, but we'll see how they look if both of those offensive tackles can't play. We'll see how they are on defense without Derwin James and if Bosa is too banged up to play. This is not the team you want to face, the Kansas City Chiefs, when you're all banged up on your offensive and defensive lines. I would like to think this game will be competitive. I don't know if it will be. I mean, you also have Justin Herbert hurting. I would like to see this game second time around, AFC West game, when the Chargers are a little bit healthier. But the Chargers are always banged up. It doesn't matter who the coach is. I mean, this is what the Chargers do. They just get hurt every week. But look, you got Harbaugh and Minter now. You got a coaching staff. All right. Let's see if Jim Harbaugh can keep this thing close and maybe pull off an upset. That would be a huge win for them, especially coming off that loss to the Steelers. All right, Sunday night games. Sunday night game. Once again, you have 2 Monday night games. Sunday night, Bills at Ravens. I said the Bills look like a Super Bowl contender. They look fantastic. Even if they lose this game in Baltimore, who are 2.5-point favorites, I'll still think the Bills are pretty good. Josh Allen, no interceptions. Biggest key right now for the Bills as they lost Steph Diggs. They let they traded Steph Diggs. Gabe Davis walked in free agency. They remade their entire receiving core with Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir. Dalton Kincaid now in his second year. He had a touchdown, but he hasn't broke out the way I thought he would. But that's just because the offense has been really balanced. And you can't, everybody who said, well, this offense was too Steph Diggs centric. Josh Allen makes too many mistakes. Well, guess what? He's spreading the ball and he has no interceptions. And that's why they're 3-0. And of course, the defense, it doesn't matter. I mean, they have injuries. They always have injuries. They're like the Chargers. They're always hurt. But Sean McDermott does an unbelievable job having that defense prepared, having it ready, disguising on the back end, getting good pressure from the front four, no matter who's available. This is why the Bills are 3-0. Well coached, good offense. They limit their mistakes, and they can definitely go into Baltimore and win that game. The Ravens, they had their get right game against Dallas, but they struggle. This team really struggles with leads. They could be up by 15 points on the Bills Sunday night, and you won't feel like the Bills are out of it because the Ravens just don't know how to close out games. I mean, they were up 28-6 against Dallas before winning 28-25. They gave up 27 points to the Chiefs. All right. They blew a 14-point lead. Was it 13, 14-point lead against the Raiders the week before at home? This is not your typical Ravens defense. They lost a lot of guys, including their defensive coordinator, who's now the head coach of Seattle, who, by the way, is undefeated. They got a first-year coordinator with Zach Orr. This is not the same defense. But you know what? Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen is always a fun watch. So you're going to watch this game because it's a great matchup of quarterbacks who can just wow you. So it'll be a fun game. If the Bills win this game, Bills go to 4-0, win this game, they will legit be considered. You might actually, for once, start to think of the Bills as good enough to beat the Chiefs if they meet in the playoffs. Titans and Dolphins. This is the first of two. They got two Monday night games, I believe, here. Titans and Dolphins. Man, Titans are in a rough spot. I talked about it. I mean, they're 0-3, and they have to go to Miami. It's going to be hot. Now, Miami's got, obviously, the Tua injury, and we don't know what's going to happen with them at quarterback. They have to win this game. Titans absolutely have to win this game. If they don't win this game, and if Will Levis continues to turn the ball over, he had 2 more interceptions last week. He's got 5. 5 interceptions through 3 games and a couple of fumbles, too. It would not shock me if Mason Rudolph, this is sort of a repetitive theme, as I talked about with Cleveland also, it would not shock me if Mason Rudolph gets a chance sooner than later if Will Levis continues to turn the ball over. Because right now, the Titans have a pretty good defense. They've got good weapons with Ridley and Hopkins. Hopkins can still play. They can move the ball with their running backs, but they need their quarterback to protect the football, and he does not do it. And if he can't do it against the Dolphins, who have a good defense, he's going to be in trouble because this Dolphins team may have a good defense, but right now you have no idea what they're going to do at quarterback. They're going to try to see if Thompson can play. Now, what you're seeing with Miami Dolphins right now is you're getting an even better appreciation for how good the Mike McDaniel Tua Tagovailoa tandem is. McDaniel is such a good play caller, and Tua is so good at getting the ball out in the offense that McDaniel has designed around him that it overcomes how bad the Dolphins are on the offensive line. Their left tackle Armstead's always hurt. He's hurt right now. They're always bad on the offensive line. And if you don't get the ball out quickly, if you don't have the experience that Tua has in that offense, like Skylar Thompson did not, well, you see what happens. The guy leaves with busted ribs, takes a bunch of hits, gets sacked 5 times against that Seattle defense. And they were trying to prepare. They were trying to see if he was going to go. He's got an extra day because it's a Monday night game to see if Thompson can make it. Reports out of practice were that he had painful practices. So they may have to go with Tim Boyle. They may have to go with Snoop Huntley. That's tough. That is a tough ask for the Dolphins, who are actually getting 1.5 points against a winless at home against a winless Titans team. But that just shows you Miami is not the same team without Tua. And if you don't love Tua, if you don't think he's a good quarterback, all right, that's fine. I mean, he's never won anything, but look how bad they are offensively when he doesn't play. That offensive line gets exposed when Tua doesn't play. You got to have at least an appreciation for Tua's ability to understand where he wants to go with the ball and get it there as quickly as he does. This will be an ugly game. The other Monday night game should be a great game. On the flip side, you got 3-0 Seattle against the Lions. The Lions are a good team. They did have a little bit of a setback week 2 against Tampa, but they are a good team. They are 3.5-point favorites. Seattle's been the surprise team. I love the way Geno Smith has looked in this new offense, this Ryan Grubb offense. He's getting his receivers to play at a really high level, just like Grubb did with his receivers at the University of Washington. Metcalf has had big games. Smith and Jigba is starting to come into his own. They've run the ball really well with Charbonnet at the backup running back for filling in for Kenneth Walker, who could be back for this game. But the reality is the Seahawks have played the Patriots, the Broncos, and then they played, Miami without Tua. They've played kind of a light schedule. This will by far and away be their toughest games, the toughest game of the year. And they're also banged up front. They've got some injuries on the D-line, and this is a Lions team that can take advantage of it. They can run the ball with Montgomery. They can run the ball with Gibbs. They can throw the ball to their backs. They can throw to Amon-Ra St. Brown. They can get the ball to Jamison Williams. Now, their center is going to be out of this game. Frank Ragnow, one of the best centers, tore a pec, I believe. That's a tough injury. I guess he's not going on IR yet. They're going to see if he can play through it. I don't know. This will have some kind of impact on their offense, I'm sure. Sam Laporta also banged up, but I like the Lions against the Seahawks in this game. It'll be a good game. It'll be probably a much better game than Titans-Dolphins. Wouldn't shock me if the Seahawks win. If the Seahawks win and go to 4-0, you're really starting to think about how good their coach is. McDonald. I mean, you're starting to think, wow, they can win the NFC West. They can pull ahead here and can be a real force. They do have good players, but the Lions are a team that I thought was going to the Super Bowl before the year. I still think they have the best chance to go to the Super Bowl out of the NFC, and this should be a really good game between two really good NFC teams. All right, that wraps it up for NFL Week 4 preview. Enjoy your football watching, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.